So, 24 years later, we have the sequel to Gladiator. Does it have a reason to exist, or is this just another nostalgia bait by Paramount? Here are my first thoughts and impressions about the movie.
Rage. Never let it go. It will carry you to greatness.
Just like the first movie, the sequel is an extrapolation on the book called Those About to Die, which chronicles the Roman Empire's decline as it carries out a plethora of conquest campaigns while attempting to quell civil unrest in Rome by distracting the populace with gladiatorial games in the Colosseum. So my first thoughts when watching the movie essentially was, is this sequel justified? Because once the credits were rolling, it just hit me like this is an exact replica of the first movie. So the director uses the same exact template verbatim to structure this sequel. He doesn't give it enough nuance, and therefore events in the sequel play out the same exact way as he did in the first movie, up from how the gladiators are recruited, to Lucilla sneaking out at night to go meet the Senate, to plan and execute a coup. And we also have an unhinged emperor. In this case, we have two this time round, and he only adds a few new threads to give it a bit nuance from the first movie. However, everything else is the same. That doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the movie, which is a mix of both violence and politics, and we have a lot of scheming in a game of moves and counter moves, especially by interesting characters like Denzel Washington's Maximus. And that's all I'll say for now, because I don't want to delve into spoilers. And the movie has a lot of fight sequences, especially within the arena, and this time round the director has found ways to raise the ante by making the fights more visceral, more brutal, and you have a plethora of animals within the arena as well, who the gladiators go face to face with for most part when they're fighting. During the action sequences, especially the ones on a grander scale, you find yourself confronted and at times distracted by this disorienting CGI, which takes you out of it. However, the one positive I'll give as far as production value is concerned is the wardrobe department, who do an amazing job dressing up the characters. And this is something I'll delve into talking about the characters. However, someone like Denzel's character, Maximus, is a very suave character. You know, he carries himself with this regal quality to him, and this is assisted by the awesome wardrobe choices that the character goes for. Speaking of Denzel, let's jump into the characters, and we'll kick off with the main character, Lucius, played by Paul Mescal. And Paul did an okay job. However, for the most part, I found him to be a bit bland. He had a charisma to him though, and the guy is jacked up. You know, his physicality will lend to some of his awesome fight sequences, which were filled with brutality and ferocity, and that in itself, you know, aided the movie in making it more enjoyable. However, he didn't offer much. I found him to be two dimensions, and that's why Denzel comes in. I think Denzel stole the show this time around. The movie really works because of his character Maximus, who is very layered. He chews scenery anytime he's on screen. His regal quality, his charisma, the usual, like, if you've watched a Denzel movie, you know what I'm talking about. The guy chews scenery like hell. Another character who stands out is Pedro Pascal as the general, and he's someone whom I resonated with because we are shown that he's not a fan of taking lives. He's actually quite empathetic. There are certain sequences where we are shown his reaction to the outcome of war when he's leading the charge against the enemies of the Roman Empire, and he's so layered and he grows on you over the runtime of the movie. Though he's not in the movie as much as I thought he was going to be, he does an amazing job with what he's given, and he helps make the movie more entertaining. He brings what we'd expect from a Pedro Pascal performance. So Lucilla, played by Connie Nelson, is more or less the same. She's relegated to the same exact role as she was in the first movie, which was one of my gripes about this being a remake of the first movie. And this part felt like Ridley Scott was just throwing her a bone, maybe doing her a favor of sorts, because she doesn't bring anything to the table besides one pivotal point in the movie. However, you know what doesn't work? The Emperors. Oh my god, this is such a waste of Joseph Quinn. You've seen him as a talented actor from Stranger Things to A Quiet Place, and he's reduced to a screaming maniac. And a good comp will be, remember the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the High Evolutionary, yeah? In the third act when he kept on screaming. This is Joseph Quinn's performance throughout the movie. From the moment you're introduced to the Emperors, most of the time you can't even make out what they're saying. They're just screaming like banshees, and it really gets annoying, and it's such a waste of such a great actor. Speaking of screaming, the dialogue in this movie is quite disappointing, because for the most part you can't make out a lot of what the characters are saying, and I found myself wishing that the movie was able to show in the theater with subtitles, because for the most part the dialogue is overrun by a lot of the background noises, a lot of the bombastic score, and the sound design in general, and you find yourself struggling to really make out what they're saying. Some names just go over your head because you can't clearly make them out, and this was something that I did not appreciate. So I'm going to give it another rewatch when it lands on streaming or VOD with subtitles this time. Yeah, a good example will be Lucius. He has a nickname which I couldn't hear for the entire time when other characters would refer to him by that name, and that goes to show how poor the dialogue was. And it wasn't just me, because the person seated next to me was like, huh, did you get that? I'm like, no. So the sound in terms of dialogue let this movie down. Speaking of sound, the score isn't all what I was hoping it to be. We have a new composer this time round, and he does an okay job, but the score is not something that resonates with you. It doesn't stick in your mind. And I was happy when the credits started rolling and we could hear Hans Zimmer's score from the first movie, and that was... Speaking of sound, this movie was in IMAX presentation, and we all know that IMAX boasts of that bombastic sound and the proper visual fidelity. However, I felt like this movie didn't take full advantage of that, because it didn't stand out. There wasn't anything that really made it memorable to experience it in IMAX. If I was to watch this movie in a Dolby theater or another standard theater, I wouldn't tell the difference, because it didn't take full advantage of the IMAX technology. But still, I'd always recommend watching all movies on a premium screen like IMAX. I feel like I'm coming down hard on this movie. However, to be honest, I did enjoy it, just that these are some of the things that stuck out to me that were a bit of a letdown. However, other aspects of the movie work. It's not all gloom and doom. We do have some interesting aspects in the movie. We have some interesting and great performances in the movie. We have some awesome action in the movie. We have an interesting and engaging story in the movie. So there's more to like to this movie.
Taking into account the things that worked for me, as well as some of the shortcomings I alluded to in the review, I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10.
Those fighters won't survive.
You must help him.
Strength them up! I don't fight for power. I fight the free road for men like them.